Where There's a Will, There's No Way is the 7th episode of the first season of Will and Grace. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. I didn't love this one. I wouldn't say I disliked the episode, but I didn't really get any joy out of it. There were maybe 1 or 2 small moments that I liked. In fact, there's one moment that I found to be quite funny, but other than that, it was just a bit flat. It deals with some important topics, but I wouldn't say it was very entertaining. So my experience with Will and Grace so far, I think, has been kind of up and down. This is only the 7th episode that I've ever seen, so it's still very early days. But I feel like I've liked some of it and not really cared for the rest of it. So I at this stage, I will watch the first season, but unless it gets better, I really don't know if I'm going to continue. There are 2 parts to the narrative with this one, and this is how little I got out of this episode. I will make notes as I'm watching it for each part of the narrative, and for one part, all I wrote was Jack got an IRS letter. And that is the extent of my notes for that part of the narrative. Jack has had multiple IRS letters, he hasn't been paying his taxes, and Will has to try and help him in this situation. I didn't get any comedy out of that. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think Jack was that funny, and that's unusual for me so far because up until this point, Jack for me has been one of the main sources of comedy, and I just didn't care. Obviously, an important message about paying your taxes and what might happen if you don't, but not necessarily entertaining. And the other part, I don't have that many more notes. Grace is feeling nothing romantically. She doesn't want to go on any dates. She's not feeling anything whenever she sees somebody who ordinarily she would think is quite attractive. There's nothing there. And she realizes, or I guess guesses, that it could be because she's having so much fun with Will that she's not needing that part of her life to be fulfilled. And I guess that does make sense if you're for example, if you're in a committed relationship with somebody, you're in a happy relationship, you're not necessarily seeking out other relationships, whether they're friendships or anything else, because that part of your needs to have fun, for companionship, it's being fulfilled already. And Grace is getting that from Will. So I guess that does make sense. And she decides that she and Will can no longer have that kind of fun together, which I don't agree with. Because you don't need to have a romantic relationship in your life, and the fact that she's not longing for that isn't a problem. If you're getting everything you need from somebody else, and you're enjoying that, don't cut that off just because you think, or because society tells you that you should be dating, you should be looking for a romantic relationship. As Will explains to her, that's okay. If you're not currently wanting to date, if you're not interested in anybody else, that's absolutely fine, and it will happen in its own time. And I really appreciate that message. I think it's really important to be reminded that, yes, society says you should constantly be dating and looking for your next romantic relationship, but if you're not needing that, then you shouldn't feel pressured to do that, certainly not at the expense of a well-established, valued friendship. And I think that that's the important part here. So the message, absolutely interesting. But the actual entertainment, there was only one bit that I enjoyed. Grace goes on some dates, and this is after she's decided she and Will can no longer have fun together. And she comes home, realizes she still felt nothing romantically or any kind of attraction for this person. And she says with the biggest smile on her face, she said, "It's me, I'm dead on the inside." And she said it with such glee, and I just loved the delivery of that. And that for me was the highlight of the episode. And obviously the message there is that it's not her friendship with Will that's causing problems. She's just not currently looking for somebody romantically. And then we have a scene in an elevator at the end, which was, I guess it was fine. Honestly, I didn't care for this episode. I didn't hate it. I wouldn't necessarily say I was bored and desperate for it to end, but I didn't really get any joy out of it. And interestingly, my personal highlight was Grace. And up until this point, Grace has actually been kind of irritating. I've really not liked her as a character for the most part. So for my personal highlight to be something that she said is a nice turning point for me. So I didn't love it. I'm still not loving the show completely, but I don't hate it. There are moments in every episode that I've enjoyed that show me that there is potential for me to really fall in love with this show and with the characters. It hasn't happened yet. And that's not that concerning, There are other sitcoms that have taken me time. For example, I hated the first season of The Office, pushed through at the recommendation of quite a few people, and I'm now in love with the show. So maybe that will happen with Will and Grace, but for now, I'd say it's average at best. I'm not loving it. There are things about it I don't like, mostly Grace's personality. I'm not really finding it that funny, but it's still early days. We're only 7 episodes in, still plenty of time for things to change. And for now, I guess I can sum up by saying where there's a will, there's no way is okay, but I wouldn't say I particularly enjoyed it.